Welcome to our podcast, I Never Lied, the Shelly Ann story. I will speak openly and honestly without fear of judgment or retaliation. I live in the city of Lloydminster. These are the famous border markers that separate the province of Saskatchewan and province of Alberta. You have to choose which province you want to live in. It is one or the other. To me, and in relation to this podcast, these border markers represent the idea that when it comes to childhood trauma and abuse, you must pick a side. On one side, you can choose to remain silent, believe this is a taboo subject, and not get involved. Or you can step on the other side and reach out to others, either to help or to get help. Just like the border markers, this is one area that you cannot live on the fence. If you try to, you will eventually fall off. In this series of podcasts, I'm hoping to educate, inform, and inspire you to stand up against childhood trauma and abuse. And if you are a victim, I want you to know that you're not alone.
Everyone has broken pieces. No one is complete. There's no such thing as perfection. It's just not within reach. The puzzle inside is coming together, and I believe it's getting better. It's getting better.
Hi, and welcome to I Never Lied, the Shelly Ann story. This is season 2, episode 6, and it's about a male's perspective on child sexual abuse. Today, I have invited my older brother to come in and share his voice, and I think that a lot of people will have a lot to learn from him. Hi, Bruce. Thank you for coming on.
No problem.
So I have a lot of questions and we don't have that much time, so we're just going to get started.
All right.
Were you a happy child?
When I think back, oh, there's lots of happiness, but there was also lots of sorrow too, right? I mean, there's kind of a balance. 1 minute you're up, the next minute you're down, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
You know, just when you're starting to feel really happy, something would happen. Either you were moving or our stepfather would do something ludicrous. So
Right.
you never know if you were, it was kind of like coming and going, you know what I mean?
Right.
Generally the happier times when I was with some other family members, you know, aunts or grandmas, or actually even times when I was boarded out to live with different people. You know, it was just there was no drama like there was when I was under his house, under his roof, right?
Okay.
Because you never knew what to expect. It was like I say, when I was I think I was 8 or 9, I remember when we lived in Kenora, Ontario. Him and mother pulled up when I was getting off the school bus. He looked through the window past my mother at me, pointed at me and said, "Hey, mister, you get home right now." So of course, as a kid, I'm like, okay, what am I gonna get this time? So then I walked up and get there, and he opens the trunk of the car, and there's a bicycle in there. Now, how do you go from being scared as a kid to being excited that there's this bicycle there, right?
Right.
But I think that was just, you know, when you look at people like him, they always want to get a reaction. I
Right.
think most serial pedophiles and even serial killers could be in the same boat, like to get that boost, that
Right.
little jolt, right?
The thrill of
So
terror, right?
yeah, So it's like I said, it was come and go, up and down.
Right. So I want to go back a little bit further because I want to know, how old were you when our father actually left?
I would have been around 4 years old because
Okay.
there was two younger sisters. One was yet to be delivered.
Right. That'd
My
be
mother was pregnant.
right.
Yeah.
So do you remember that time of him leaving?
No, nothing. I don't even remember him as part of my life. To me, at that point, he was like a stranger. I mean, he's a truck driver. He's on the road all the time, right?
Right.
So I would say I never even asked, but his visits were probably brief, like 1 or 2 days, and then gone for months again or whatever. But
Right.
no, I don't recall any of that.
So how old were you when our stepfather came into the picture?
Well, I had to be about 5 years old, I guess. No, well, yeah, because if I think back, I think about the school I went to, and I was in grade 2, and I remember him coming into my room and explaining to me where he had been. So he was previously with us. He had gone to jail, and he was coming in to give the speech of, "I'm telling you this because I don't want you to turn out to be like me." So that was, I guess I would have been about grade 2. I would have been about 6 years old, 7 years old, somewhere in there.
Right. So there was a lot of violence on our home, and within the family, not just our family, but the extended family. So can you kind of tell me how that affected you?
How it affected me was, all I knew was how to deal with things was with violence. I mean, any incident or conflict with kids at school, kids on the street, to me, violence was the way to take care of it. It's better to hurt than to be hurt.
Right.
So for a long time, in my teenage years especially, I did a lot of fighting at parties. Uh, I even fought back against the RCMP. You
Right.
know, I wasn't intimidated or scared by anybody. And I knew that, actually, I recall we were living in the Ear Falls, and I think I would have been about 9 years old. We were only 2 days in the complex of the mining town, and two boys from across the way were picking on this little 4-year-old, and I stood up to them for her, and I punched the one kid right in the face. But then all the time that we lived in that place, there was always conflict. So you were always scrapping as a kid and stuff. But I think from the time we left there and moved back west, I was pretty good kid till about 13, but then all hell kind of broke loose.
Right.
So I became a violent person, and as well as in some relationships. I mean, I don't have a problem saying, I mean, I learned my lessons right away. I mean, when I was 17, my girlfriend was 15 years old. Uh, I saw that my buddies were giving their girlfriends a crack up the backside of their head or a kick in the ass. So I thought, hey, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
Try to toe the line, right? Show
Right.
the power. Well, after the first time I did it, that was it. She had nothing to do with me. So I learned early that that kind of behavior with women, especially, don't get no positive results.
Right. So how old were you the first time our stepfather sexually assaulted you?
I would say maybe 8 years old. It was just prior to going to visit our so-called father in Winnipeg. And yeah, Mother was gone somewhere. I don't know where she was gone. He was looking after us. And he came and got me and brought me into the room and proceeded to do what he did. With him, it was pretty much a one-time thing. And as I got older, I mean, I think it kind of blanked out of my mind till a certain point in time. It was better to toss it in the back and not know it until later on when time went along. I've always justified it by saying, well, what he did wasn't as bad as what he's done to other people. Knowing now that any incident, any little thing like that, along with multiple things later in my life, affected me.
Yeah.
So whether it was a one-time thing and what the episode was, I always downplayed it. I always sucked it up.
Right.
Be a man, suck it up. You gotta
Right.
remember, I come from the era of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, right?
Yeah.
I mean, back then, as we'll go on, you'll find out more, but sometimes some people think things that happen to you in life are a badge of, oh, you're a man, suck it up.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
So did you tell anybody when it happened?
I never ever told anybody till I was about 16 when you kind of came out with what was going on with you. I really never did push it hard, but I knew it was true in my own mind. I know what you were telling everybody was the truth. And in some ways, the way we were brought up, as far as I'm concerned, we discarded certain members of our family as what they say are stories, attention grabbers.
Yeah.
But I knew in my heart at 16 that you were not lying about what had happened, because I know what he had done. And I watched his behavior over the years too, right? Remember, I seen other things going on that some people might not have seen.
Right. So I guess my question then about it, did you ever get counseling for it when you were a child, is no, because you didn't tell anybody, right?
That's right. My counseling didn't come until I had to serve time. Actually, I had some counseling from about 23 on, but on a number of other different issues, not so much about him, but I think it's all tied together and related.
Right.
Because it takes more than one nail to build a house.
Yes.
It takes many nails,
Right.
or I should have said more than one nail to build a coffin. But it wasn't until I committed a crime, pled guilty, got a sentence of 2 years. And then when I was in the minimum security facility, I weekly was involved with a psychiatrist
Right.
provided by Corrections Canada. But I had done some counseling before that. I did some ADAT counseling.
So that's going to be my next question, because first of all, how old were you when you first started using drugs of any kind?
The first time I got high was 12 years old.
Okay.
It was at when we lived on Fort Road. For some reason, the parents decided that our family wasn't big enough, so they always had these different people living in our houses. Some of our houses were big enough to hold that. There was a couple, they were kind of like hippies. And I would go with this fellow on his job and help him out through the day. And then I'd go sit with him and his wife up in the upper suite and smoke hash with them. And then probably around the same time, we had some weddings and stuff like that. And as kids, we always used to steal booze and go hide and drink it and stuff like that. So
Right.
I began with substances very early, 12 years old. I know there's a lot of others that start a lot earlier.
was our stepfather the only one who ever abused you?
No, I mean, when I was 15, New Year's Eve, would have been New Year's Eve of 75. I was enjoying the New Year's Eve with a relative, her boyfriend, and a very close friend of the family. A very close friend of the family was 10 years older than me. But when my aunt and her boyfriend went to bed, the two of us went downstairs in the basement and each enjoyed each other's company. So for me, that was the first time of intimacy.
Right.
And it kind of ran on because I think one thing I had always been, I think I always had a mother syndrome.
Okay.
I was always looking for that perfect mother. I mean, I remember a lot of my mother's girlfriends that would come to visit or have coffee with mom, and right now I'm on their lap. And I remember one specifically, one that was friends of hers for a long time, and I was so in love with that lady. She just treated me so good, so well. She gave me love and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I think with what was going on throughout the years, there was a bit of a disconnect between the loving emotion, you know. Yeah. So with this 25-year-old, I think that's a lot of it too, right? Was I was looking for that motherly love, although it turned in a different direction.
Right.
I don't want it to sound weird like I had a fixation on my mother or anything,
No.
but
No.
it's
Yeah.
just that she was an older female. She was comforting. It was new to me. And in 1975, you tell your friends and they're all patting you on the back.
Yeah.
When in actuality, I know today in my mind, that is child sexual abuse.
Yeah.
I mean, I was 15 years old.
Yeah. Exactly. So do
And
you,
it did affect me though,
of course.
because it hurt me. It hurt me when I got pushed aside, because little did I know that you shouldn't write things in books that people can find and they read and see your story, and then all hell breaks loose. And that person that you got so attached to does things to try to push you away,
Yeah.
mean things, right? And I won't go into the mean things, but there was things done along the way to try to discourage me from having any affection
Right.
anymore.
So, Bruce, do you think you use drugs in a way to soothe what was hurting you or your emotions?
A lot of times I said, I don't really think any of that came to the forefront till I got older. I think lots of times I used it because everybody else was doing it.
Yeah.
I liked it. It, it gave me, depending on what the drug was, gave me a sense of empowerment. I mean, there were some drugs that make you kind of settle and lay back, but there's some that they egg you on.
Yeah.
They give you the courage and the strength and whatever to in the fights, be aggressive, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. There was other people that there was a close family relative. Well, there was a couple of them actually. One when I was like 13, one when I was like 14. There were sexual encounters,
Right.
and they were the perpetrators. I
Right.
was being educated on how you have sex with a man, right, by another male.
Yeah.
The other person I'm not going to speak of.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
to say anything would be senseless,
Yeah.
and it might hurt some of the people that are still alive.
Right. Right.
So, I mean, all in all, I started to learn that these kind of behaviors are appropriate. And those were prior to me being 15. So when that came along, I just thought it was all part of the game, right?
Right.
I mean, hey, it's normal. You do what you want with other people when you want,
Right.
right? So it kind of whatever. I mean, yeah.
So how, once you began to realize that what happened to you was not normal and should never have happened,
Yeah.
what happened to you internally? Like, did you get angry? Did you carry the anger? Like, that's kind of what I want to know, how it affected you.
Well, how it affected me was my alcohol use consumption skyrocketed and generally ended up in some kind of storm,
Right.
you know, some kind of drama, whatever. I mean, a lot of times I remember once I hit the legal age to drink, uh, generally 7 out of 10 times it involved the police,
Right.
you know, for whatever issue or whatever, right? Whether I was being good or being bad, I always ended up in the back of a cop car.
Right.
So at 42, I realized that was 2002. I realized that the occasion was simply 1+1=2. So how do you eliminate having that number 2? Well, you get rid of the alcohol, right? So
Right.
I haven't had a drink since 2002. So for 20 years, I've been drink free.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'd like to know, because this is your perspective. I've seen you grow and become such an incredible person, especially in my life. What advice would you have for other men that are out there who are still trapped within the deep confines of their abuse? What kind of advice could you give them?
Simply put, one thing I've always done, I think, is I've been very open and very vocal about the abuse from the stepfather. He's the one that perpetrated it. I felt no fault in it whatsoever. I've never felt no fault. The only fault I ever feel is that when you came out, I didn't support you because I knew already what kind of man he was. I experienced him firsthand. And if you think back about it, I mean, other than people in his life prior to us, I would have been the first one that he abused that I know of. I
Yeah.
mean, in those 8 years of my life, who's to know what he did prior to that? I mean, there's rumors about stories with his sister and his niece and
Yeah.
some others, right?
Well, basically, I mean, men, I know
Oh, about
sexual
advice?
assault, it
Yeah.
affects them so much differently than it does women.
Well, for the longest time, see, I've never had a problem with uh my own maleness, masculinity. I've never had a problem with saying, hey, I was sexually abused by a male. I don't have that problem. So what if it was a male or a female? You've been abused. So speak out, talk about it, get therapy. One of the best things I ever did, although it wasn't really successful, was when I was 26, I went into a alcohol and drug center for 3.5 months. And I was only there a few short days, working from the male group and being moved into the female group, where it was a majority of women and only a few of us men. And to me, that was the best thing ever
Right.
because I felt free enough. And I still felt free enough to speak in front of a group of all men.
Yeah.
But I found it more freeing to sit there and speak in front of women, cry if I had to, tell the story that I know. And it was great. It just gives you more strength and more tools. The more tools you can put in your bag, simple little things. They don't have to be extraordinary big things. They just have to be simple little things that you put in place for yourself, tools, so that when you hit that spot that you need to implement that tool, you have it.
Right.
But be very open about it. Be courageous to share your story. And you really realize once you open up how many people are willing to listen to you.
Right.
The real people, the good people, right? There's
Right.
a lot of naysayers. There's people that were allies of his from our family, like relatives, right?
Yeah.
And they were complicit in his behavior. They gave him a place to go and stay, a place to get drunk with them, and all that.
Right.
Uh, you know, but hey, be open,
Yeah.
own it. It's yours.
And don't wear the
And
blame.
it doesn't have to be owned in a negative way. It just has to be owned, knowing that it happened to you, and that rear view mirror, put it in there, keep it in your mind,
Yeah.
never let it go. You can't. People say, oh, take all your stuff, put it in a bag, put it on the shelf.
Yeah.
You can't do that realistically because we're humans. We have feelings.
Right.
You don't forget. You never forget. You get better. You heal. As far as I'm concerned, you can heal, in my mind, completely.
Right.
If you want to, and if you want to work forward to it. But if you want to hang on to it and moan and groan, I never used anything that happened to me in my life as an excuse for the perpetrations that I did.
Right.
I'm in a hotel room, I'm 26 years old. This was prior to going to the center. We're in the bar all night. We're repairing Edmonton's power lines after the tornado. And we're in the bar, we're drinking, we're partying, girls come and hang out, and we take care of them and all that. One follows you up to your room, starts to play the game. I grabbed her by the throat. And as I did that, something in my brain went, this is not right. This
Yeah.
is not the behavior you want to be showing. So I pulled my hand away from her. I sent her out the door.
Right.
Unfortunately, I did the same thing the next weekend. Exactly the same. I let go and said, get out of here.
Right.
Okay. I never put myself in that position again.
Right. Because
I know.
the real thing is that with a lot of men, especially in my counseling services that I do, I find that a lot of men who beat their wives or their kids, when you come to the core of it, that's where it started, was abuse when they were children. And making them understand that it's okay to release that. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to get it off your chest and to stop wearing the blame.
In my mind, there's two parts. There's the counseling and talking about it
Yeah.
with people you trust, or if you're religious, your minister or whoever that you feel safe enough to speak to. But there's also the physical part. What was the question again? You're gonna have to edit it because I
Just
lost.
basic men who are violent now with their wives and kids, that's the base story to where their issues come from. And I
Yeah,
think what I found with working with clients is that when you get to the root of the problem, the reaction of the abuse that they're handing out now stops.
yeah. I think my abusive nature when it comes to stuff like that was watching the step monster
Yeah.
uh deal with things violently.
Yeah.
I remember, I mean, I had my head punched through the drywall. Uh the mental abuse, the physical abuse, the sexual abuse, although it was one time, but then later on it became more just the psychological and physical, having your head shoved through the wall,
Yeah.
things like that. Yeah. When you watch how people deal with issues, you learn it. I mean,
Yeah.
you learn everything from your mom and dad.
Right.
I don't care what anybody says. Although there's certain, I'm not going to go into all that because I'm not a professional. I just think myself that way, right?
Yeah. So your suggestion then is that they find somebody to talk to release it to, and start working to make themselves a better person. They're not bad people because they were abused, right?
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, like I said, own it for what it is. It was if you want to call it, a crime against you.
Yeah.
I didn't perpetrate it. I mean, I've always owned responsibility for everything I've done in my life.
Yeah.
I never made excuses for anything. I know what I was doing every time I did something, whether it was good or bad.
Right.
And there were bad things. And you own it. There's no excuses. Just because somebody abuses you doesn't mean you can go out and be an abuser. I
Right.
mean, even the most half intelligent person knows right from wrong.
Yeah.
Unless they're so far down the road and the abuse was so extreme that they've now flipped.
Yeah.
That little gear inside there that can turn things off doesn't flick anymore. I mean, I'm 16, I'm working in a restaurant. The owner, he's in his 40s. We get into an altercation. We're scruffling and fighting and tugging around in the back of the restaurant. We ended up at the top of the stairs where there's like 40 stairs, and I had him, and I could have thrown him down that stairs.
Yeah.
But for some reason, there was an intervention. Something clicked and said, no, don't do it.
Right.
I mean, I could have killed him. I could have
think-
crippled him.
One of the things that bothered me for so many years, and it's funny now because I actually understand it, was I always thought it was a cop out to say, I was abused, so I abused. And the truth of the matter is that, yes, we do abuse, whether it's ourselves that we abuse or abuse somebody else. So,
Realistically, on different levels, we're all abusers.
yeah,
Now, whether it's self-abuse or abuse towards somebody else, if we've had conflict and trauma and drama in our lives,
that becomes our norm.
that's right.
Yeah.
And then whether we know it sometimes, because now I'm no longer a physical abuser,
Yeah.
but I sure know how to cut somebody's throat with words.
Right.
And in a way, it doesn't matter that I'm 62 now, but there's times when I need to hold my tongue.
Yeah.
Because it would hurt worse than any punch I could give anybody.
Right.
And sometimes, unfortunately, I slip it up, and then there's little waves, and then whatever.
Yeah.
But sometimes some people just need a good awakening,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, for me, my
I'll-
brother, I think one of the greatest joys I've had in my life is watching you change and grow and develop and flourish into a wonderful, loving, supportive man. And I am so proud to call you my brother. And I am. I love you to the end of the world. And I really value that you took this opportunity to speak out publicly. And I know somebody out there who's watching this will be able to relate with you and maybe make some changes in their lives.
Yeah, the only thing I hope to get out of this is that even just one person gets part of what I'm saying.
Right.
I mean, you know me like you. We're both here for other people now.
Yes.
We're here to support, lift them up, give them direction, and let them know it's not a dead end.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
don't have to give in. You don't have to quit, you know?
Yeah.
So I hope somebody out there hears what we're saying.
I do too.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Love
Bye.
ya.
Love you too.
Bye-bye.